Welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm going to be doing a picture that has a lot of movement and color to it. It's from a calendar that get in the mail from one of the hospitals, Shriners Hospital. We get quite a few calendars in the mail, and I usually go through it. I can't say that I save every month of the year, but I'll pick out certain ones that I feel I can do a painting, halfway decent painting with the composition. It can be something to do with the composition, or maybe whatever the subject is, the color attracts, and the shapes and so forth, and texture. Those things kind of are the ingredients I look for. I kind of outlined this with a black marker just to show you how you could take parts of a picture and just crop it. You know, I usually take a little window and move it around on the paper and pick out an area and then outline it. And sometimes I cut that area out. Probably this you can cut out and just save. But sometimes you can get more than one picture out of the same. I should say one. You can get more paintings from one picture, and so there's different areas that you might use within that same framework. Sometimes people do that. Artists do that quite often. You'll go into an office, sometimes you'll see the pictures on the wall. There's two paintings side by side that relate to each other. They're similar in texture, shapes, and color, and whatnot, and maybe even subject matter too. So that's how that works out. So anyways, I'm going to start in today, and you can see that overall I look for something like an S shape, S movement, diagonal lines, and so forth. When you do like a waterfall, it's like almost steps that you, different elevations, you know, how the fall drops and whatnot. Some people have nice little gardens in back, and they have like little waterfalls, and kind of very interesting, very attractive with the plants and flowers on either side and whatnot. So I'm going to see what we can do with this today. I usually put some tape around the edges, and it makes sort of a false matte white area when I remove the tape. And then when I do my picture, I sketch it very light at first with pencil, and then go over it sometimes a little bit darker. Sometimes I outline it a little bit with a permanent marker, black or whatever color you want to use, and go from there. But I don't spend an awful lot of time on the drawing itself, but I do like the idea of getting sort of a movement in the picture. It could be a loop, like a C shape or something like that goes around, S shape, Z, whatever letter of the alphabet that would make it work. But Z's and S's and C's and even an O is all right if you're making a wreath type thing, whatever it might be. But that's where you want to get some movement into your painting. And of course, distribution of color is very important. This particular photograph has all the ingredients of different shades of color. I'll probably use sometimes I'll use a little bit of out here and put it inside here if I need it. But I usually use a photograph as a reference, and I don't always try to copy it exactly, but I will find different areas that might be interesting for a painting. So I really never copy a painting exactly the way it is, but I can move things around, take things out, leave things out, you know, and go from there. So let's get started on this one and see what we can do. Now, I put these marks here so I know if I close it in, of course, put the line solid, I'd know where the center is. That's very important to know where the center is so that you can work off center, you know, a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to have this waterfall cascading down. Oh, I want to point out why I didn't use any of this bottom part, because that's really, in the photograph here, it's really out of focus. And I don't need as much of that out of focus foreground. So I moved my picture that I'm looking at mostly up into this area. I don't need as much of that that's on the bottom. So we'll see how this works out anyways, what I can do with it. Now, you want to think of the big picture, like the sections. Now, up in this upper corner here, the big shapes, you got a triangle, you got like an oval shape coming in here, sort of like a triangle area here, and you got a little bit of this down across the bottom. I kind of break it up a little bit, but I like to see the big chunks, the big shape. Some of the artists call it the big picture, you know, what you're really going for. Okay, now, I'm going to save this corner. There's going to be a lot of green in there. Now, if you want to mark it with a light colored G for green, that's fine. In there, you're going to hide that with paint anyways. Then we've got another area here, or a little patch of green that comes in over here. So you can put a little G there. On this side here, we're going to have the cascade of water. I could hold this up, maybe, show it to you. We got the water movement down here, and then it kind of levels off and then goes over another edge, drops down, okay? So let's see what I can do. It's never exactly the same as the photograph, but I am using the photograph as a little bit of a reference. And you know, even when I'm painting on location outside, I'm looking around, I'm seeing what I can take out or put into my pictures all the time. You know, if you need this or that, something, whatever, and to balance it off. So let's see, we got the water, it's cascading in through here. So we're coming down. There's a little level area almost up here. I don't want to put it halfway, but above halfway. I'm going to put a line there where it's dropping. This waterfall is going to drop through here. And then you got some land, a shape coming in from your left side. Notice I mentioned coming in. I don't like anything going out of my painting, so this comes in here. And then you got the water just sort of levels off and runs off over this way. Now this corner, you could make that, fill that in a little bit with some plants or color. So what I've got here is just a layout of the big shapes where I want to go with it. And I made it kind of light today, and I'm going to erase some of that. Don't want that too hard in there to show through. Okay, so we got a little area here that's where the drop is gonna be, and where the source is coming from in here. So let's indicate where that's gonna come in. Let's have that drop in here a little bit more this way. And then it comes into here, and it's gonna go over the edge right up in there somewhere. And that's going to come down into here. Then we got the land coming in. I think we can get around this okay. Seems to work out all right. Now, what I'm going to do now is just wet the paper. I'm just going to use my biggest brush I have. This happens to be a flat 1-incher. And I'm just going to wet that whole paper. Might be a little bit of paint still in the brush. That's okay. That's all right. You don't want too much paint left in the brush, but I guess the last color I used was sort of what's in the picture here anyway. Yellowish green color. So that's okay. Now I'm wetting the whole paper. Now maybe by the time I get to a certain area, it will have dried out a little bit more. Maybe. I don't want to leave any puddles there because that takes too long to settle in and dry. But I do want to moisten the paper so that I can slide the paint on a little bit easier. Okay. Now what I've put out on my palette is not every color I have. I put my 3 primary colors in. I've got my yellow. I always put the yellow at the top. The red on the left side. Across over here is your blue. So those are 3 primary colors, and I put a little bit of green because I might need to use some of that a little bit later down in here. And I can add other neutral colors. You know, I have Payne's Gray sometimes if I want to darken a color. If you want to lighten a color, you don't have to put white paint into it. With watercolor, you just dilute it down, more water into the color, and it just lightens up. Okay, let's see if we can get around this. Let's start off. I always start off with some of my yellow. That's sort of my lighter color. So I'm going to put a dash of that up in here, up in this corner here. And then I'm going to come down, repeat that over here. There'll be some yellow in here. And then there's going to be some yellow that comes out this way. Right across in there, we're going to put some of that color. And in this painting, the green has a lot of yellow in it. And that's how the grass is when you know, your fresh grass starts off in the spring. It's more of a yellowish, brighter green. And so forth. See, even the leaves too can be. Let's just do a little bit of yellow in this corner. Okay. All right. Now my edges, for the most part, are soft. Okay, I'm just putting soft edges. There's nothing hard about what I've just put in. It's almost out of focus right now, similar to the photograph here that I'm looking at. Okay, now let's see what we can do with this one. We already got some yellow, so I don't have to start off with a lot of green. And I'm just going to put some of that green on top of where I have my yellow. Okay, and here you go. A little band of it through here. I put a little bit more blue into what I had here of my yellow. And you can you can wiggle the brush around while the paint's still wet on your paper. See what we can do. Okay. Got some, turning this a little bit greener. You can add blue too into it if you want. We're going to have some blue into the water anyways. Okay, get that in there. Erase that. Lighten it up. Here you go. Okay. Now, what I like about the painting, I like the idea of getting some pink in there. I don't know why, but I always think of Easter having a little pink color to it. Pink eggs or something like that, I don't know. But it's springtime. So we could use a little bit of red. And if you thin the red down enough, it's pink. You make it like a more pinkish color. And you could put a dash of that. Oh, we've got to put more than that in there. Let's add some more water to this. Okay, we're gonna have some dashes of pink up in there, and we're gonna put some. Let's see, I'm looking at in here. Okay, we're gonna have some pink. Why don't we just take some of that pink and push it into that corner, and have that coming out over here. You don't see too much of it because I've kind of blocked it in there with the marker, what I'm looking at here. We can definitely put some more pink down in here because it's there. Okay, it's in there. Already it's kind of perked it up, hasn't it? A little bit brighter. Okay. I could do some of these flowers a little bit more out of focus here. Or whatever it might be. Yeah, whatever it is. Okay, let's lift some of that out. But by the way, you can also blot if you feel that you're going too far into this. A lot of times you can blot it, you know. Now I'm painting wet into wet, so and the paper is relatively flat on the table here. It is quite flat, so the paint's going to spread out a little bit and create a little water stains maybe, and it will mix into the colors I've already applied to the paper. Some of these little areas could be darker. Maybe at the base is right on the bottom edge here. Let's make that a little brighter here. Okay. Now this is kind of fun in a way because what you're doing is you're jumping around, but we're hiding a lot of the white. And most artists will tell you this before they start a painting. That's what that would bother them the most, was dealing with just that white piece of paper and what you're going to do with it, you know. But if you put some color into it to begin with, you can kind of go with the flow a little bit more. Now, right in here, I don't know if I want to have that too much. I want to show some of the water. And also, you know what I do? I have this white, and I use acrylic white. It's a little bit more opaque than the regular watercolor white. Sometimes with your set of paints, they'll give you a white, and it's called Chinese white. The only trouble is that particular white is a little bit not strong enough, and if you're trying to hide something like a dark color, it doesn't cover as well. But this is a little bit more opaque to use this particular paint here. Okay, now, what do we got here? Okay, jumping around. There's going to be some little darker hints of color. And you know what you have to do with watercolor? You have to let certain areas dry before you go into them. Because what happens is that it will keep spreading out and mixing, and you never get quite what the shapes and things that you're looking for. Okay, I can go back and do the same thing into my green, and I could put like I've got the green here, and make that a little darker shading into that. You notice that I jump around. I don't finish any one particular area. And some people do. They'll get fussier. They'll work themselves in an area and they don't move out of there. It's hard to get out of that spot sometimes. But if you just jump around with your colors, it makes it a lot better. If you use a big brush, sometimes it's hard to control a fussy little shape. So sometimes that's okay, because you might not want to get too fussy with the shapes anyways too much when you're working. Let's put a dash of green into that. I see it in spots, you know, jump around. Okay, and then get some more color into that across here. in the foreground, you can have everything fade away to it. I do towards the edges of your paper. Go right up into the corner with it because you're going to take the tape off afterwards and reveal your sort of a false mat around your work. Okay. Let's get some darker color up into here. I noticed that there's some color up in there. Let's get a little bit more up in there. Of course, when you get towards the edges, you can have it fade away anyways. Now I have to get back painting. If you get away from painting for a while, you're not doing as much, all of a sudden you find yourself getting too fussy with it. And you don't get that sort of looseness that they refer to as being like fluid, motion. And watercolor is a kind of a fluid thing. It flows. And you never really get too tight with it. Try not to anyways. Okay, a little dark area around here. I guess I can go up in there a little bit. Go right to the edge. Make sure that's filled in to the edge here, so you have a contrast between the white mat and the picture. Not that you always have to do it that way, but there you go. Okay, so I got two corners that are similar, so I might want to change one a little bit more, break it up, make it look different somewhat. Okay. Okay, you're kind of jumping around here a little bit. I probably want to get some more red into here eventually. Let's spot this thing, pick up some more. Right in through here, just a little touch of some red in there. There we go. We'll let that go for now. What else? Let's see. Oh, you know what I did? I get carried away a lot of times. I fill in some of the areas that I don't want that color to be in there that much. And this is where white comes in. You can blot it while it's still wet. You can make it lighter, but if you use your acrylic, let's put some over here in the empty well, a little bit. And now we're going to use the acrylic like you would use that fluid to hide a mistake here. Let's get we're going to put some white back in here, okay? I'm just painting over, filling in over here where it should be whiter. Okay, where the water's cascading down. You're going to have some eventually in there. Where are we? Okay, over here. Now, in the photograph, it's sort of a bluish color. I'll put probably a little bit of that color in there, but I don't have to do a lot of that. Let's make this a little lighter up in here, cut into there. You see how you can make this thing, you could hide all of that where you put too much paint in. You want that area to be lighter. They say when you do waterfalls, you're supposed to not go in the direction of the water dropping down from top to bottom, but you can push the white, take the white and push it up into the water, like this. Okay. Put some white back in there. We're going to have a little bit of white water, just lighter out here. out this way. I may have to make that darker there because when I pull the tape off, it's not going to work as well. Let's put this a little bit of green around there. Break that up a little bit more. Yeah, that's that. Okay. Put a little bit into here. You could work the white wherever you want to hide something. White out, if you will. I was trying to think of that brand name. Whiteout, is it, that they use when you want to correct something? Let's see where this is. That's going to be too much white there. So let's add a little bit of something into that. Got to add some color into there. Yeah, put a little blue coming into it. The water, you can kind of, the water's cascading down. So you can kind of make that a little bit bumpy and rough and whatever it's going to be doing. Get a little bit, I'm going to do it light blue first, but I can make, they've got it here, it looks very much like purple in there. But you know what they do? They put a filter on the camera, you know, they put these color filters. And so they can make the water look pink or blue or whatever they want to do with it. But the artist, he or she just takes where you're at and goes from there. Let's push it up into this thing, huh? How about that? Okay. Let's erase some of that. Take some of that, make it softer on the edges. Yeah, a little bit more like this. Push, 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 push into it. And then where it drops on the edge, that edge can be a little bit more, make that more of a straight edge, and then it goes over the edge. Okay, we'll come back to that a little bit later. Build it up on the edges. Now, what we want to do here, where's my white again? I want to make this something out in here, coming down, running in out of here. Let's give it that a little bit more blue on the edge. You get that contrast in there. Now, let's see, where are we? We're on this edge, right in here. Let's just push that with a little bit of a darker shade of blue right across in here. No, that might be too much. Whoa, go easy. There you go. Now, if you do what I just did, just blot it quick. There you go. So I don't have all these little spots. Okay, now what was I trying to do here? Oh, yes. Make that line a little bit more noticeable there. But not that, maybe I still have to take something out of it, so I'm going to wet it down and just pull that off across here. Let's see what we can do with that. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now, you could do this like what I'm doing now, is you can leave it, and it could be almost a semi-abstract painting. You know, the way you do it, semi-abstract. Not completely abstract, you still can recognize something in it. Okay, now we're going to come around the bend. I'm going to put a little bit more color into this with the blue. Right, oops, a little bit too much, but it is dark in the picture, so we can leave that darker for a while. See if that's okay. Take some of the texture out of it, just flatten it out a little more. Yeah, that's okay for now. All right, now maybe just a little bit of blue coming around the bend here. Yes, put a little wash. Oops, a little bit that. I don't want maybe that noticeable. So take some of that out of there, and just pull it across. Now you have to go with the flow, you know, the direction that the water is moving. And so in this case, we can go a little bit over here. Let's take a little bit more of my white, push that up into it. And we can go through here, off to the edge. Okay, so we got some interesting things happening so far. I don't like that, so let's break that up in here. Notice that with watercolor, you just have to wet it, activate the paint, and almost use the brush like an eraser. Take some of that right out of there, if you don't like too much of that in there. Okay, there you go. Down with the flow. Let's push a little bit up into here. Just I'm making some contrast here. I gotta kind of take your eye, move your eye up in there somehow, and we're gonna go. We could go into this a little darker, a little bit darker into here. Okay. I want to erase some of that a little bit. You don't want to show too many real hard edges, and just let that go out off towards the edge of your paper. Okay, we can doctor that up a little bit more. Okay, now in some cases we can see what we can do with this. Where to put some dark into it. Okay, some of the outlines. You might want to show a little bit more texture, but you have to be careful because you don't want to put too much texture into one particular area and then neglect something else, you know. So you have to be careful about that. But we could show a little bit more texture. Hit it a little bit. Let it dry a bit so it doesn't just kind of blend and bleed into the paper. You want some of this to stand out and hold up on the surface to show some of the leaves and texture that you may be in there. Jump around a little bit. Okay, I think I can put a little dash of something darker through here. Okay, take some of that out, push it, pull it up into here. Okay, if I go that dark there, I have to do something somewhere else. Maybe bring this in darker over here. With watercolor, you can make your paintings very, very soft, very fluid. And what happens a lot of times is we forget about that and we start getting too fussy, too heavy in one area, and all of a sudden it gets distracting. So you have to be careful. Make sort of these little things you do interesting shapes. Okay? Just got to break it up. You can pull out of it, pull things. So it looks like plants in there, something like that. But you notice I'm jumping around, I'm moving around different places. I could go a little darker in here. This is kind of heavy through here, sort of too much of a solid shape. So what you can do with that, you could just go into that and break it up a little bit more. Make it more interesting. Whatever is back there. Okay. Now you do a little bit of that. You could do a little bit down here while you're thinking about it. Just break up this big shape in the corner. See how that's sort of like a accidental. That's what we call a stain, like a water stain. And if it's an interesting texture, I leave it in there. I don't erase it with the brush. Just leave it there. Okay, and through here, break this up a little bit more. Give it more contrast in the corner. All right, you see how we're working this, developing it. And what you want to eventually do, you want the water cascading down to get more attention. So having said all that, eventually I got to come back into this and push some more darker color. You can see it in here. You can see it in the photograph where it should be a little bit darker. I'm not going to try to make it too purplish though. I don't want to get too purple. So I might emphasize using a little bit more blue in there. And if I want to make my blue darker, I just take a little bit of my Payne's gray, if I have one with me. Yeah, this one here. Keep that in mind. Maybe put that out. Put that right up in, well, right over here. I'll forget where I left it, maybe, but it's over in the, but you take a little bit of Payne's gray, and that's when you can start working maybe some of the edges, you know, put a little bit of texture in there, and bring out the emphasis of the edge being a little darker. It brings out where the water is, you know, cascading down. I don't want that in there. Too much blue on my brush here. Take that out of there. Okay. So yeah, you could do that. Put some more of that color, that little bit of dark there. And even over in the foreground here, if you want to take some of that little darker shade, and just work that into this area. There is a little darker area here. So I just pull that out across the bottom edge here. See what we can do with it. Erase this in here. Wiggle the brush around a little bit. Pull it out here. Okay. We could do something a little darker with this too. Let's give that a little darker shadow in here. You don't want to make it too noticeable, but you don't want it to make it too empty either. Now, keeping in mind, we're going to try to make this little waterfall show up, so we might have to push something else up into that to kind of bring it out a little bit more. That's what might take a little bit more time. You know, when you're trying to just give a little bit more emphasis to a particular area. You have to be careful you don't overdo it. You want to try to make it as simple as you can. Just break out this a little bit more. I'm always jumping around on the paper here. You don't want to get bogged down in one particular area. Let's see if I can add a little bit more contrast darker in there. A little bit more over here on the edge. This looks like it's a little bit much. Let's put some pink back in there. Oh, we need more than that. A little bit more red. And water it down a little bit more. Okay. Now, whatever this is going to turn out to be, you know, sometimes you might lose the waterfall, and you just got an interesting pattern of color. You know, you get kind of the distribution of your color going here, and you forget about what the subject is. Oh, Oh, it's supposed to be a waterfall? Oh, yeah, sure. All right. Take some of that. Well, you got to get that level there somehow so it goes over the edge. And if it's just too solid, I just take and put some white paint back in there. That's what takes a little longer. Sometimes. Okay. We'll go a little darker in here. That's quite a bit darker. I got a lot of that paint's gray on the brush there. Wanted to pick up a little bit more of that red. Yeah. Not that much maybe, but you know, we can take that out. Now, it gets a little bit much, I just blot it. And just make sure I get some more green back there. Kind of fill it in with some green texture. Don't want to get carried away here. There's too much of that. Okay. If I'd done that here, let's add a little bit over here. If you repeat a color somewhere, people will say, "Oh, well, he didn't make a mistake and make only one area of that particular color." So you put it somewhere else, and they'll say, "Oh, color distribution," you know, that type of thing. Okay. See where we're going with this. Now, I think maybe rather than trying to make the land too dark, maybe I just make the water a little darker. So you got your blue, and you got a little bit of Payne's gray over here, and we'll see if we can mix something up. It might be a little, just a darker shade of blue. And put some of that in there. So it's more noticeable. Okay, we're going to come down into here. We can make this a little darker through here. All right. This is really amounting to be more abstract than you would expect. Push up into it. Getting a little bit more that way. I don't mind abstract painting. But it's sometimes it's the way out of trouble with a painting. To just say, okay, let's go that way. Change it a little bit. You're going to make minor adjustments. I want to give it a little bit more contrast up in there. That might be a little bit too much blue. Let's put a little bit more darker color into it. See what that does. Okay, not bad. Where else? Well, let's make this a little darker through here. Pull that away. This is going to be an interesting painting because it's coming out a little bit more abstract than maybe I intended. You know, it's more suggestive, whatever, which is okay. I can live with it, live with it, live with it. All right. Interesting. You know what I wanted to get away from lately? Some of my pictures that I've been doing, I get hung up on too much green. you know, I put in the green and then do the flower and so forth, but the green is kind of overwhelming. So I'm trying to get away from too much green and getting more of color into it. Okay. Now, let's see what, I want to probably go a little darker out through in here where it's going off. Take some of the edge off of that. Yeah, it's running off into this area. Goes off the paper, so to speak. You may not want that to be too noticeable, so sometimes what I do is just erase that and water it down so it sort of goes off a little bit softer. Now, see where we're at. Yeah, here's a little clean spot on that. Yeah, just blot it a little bit so it's lighter, that's all. Just kind of just have it disappear more. Okay. Put a little darker contrast up in here. Just a little bit more. You kind of get the idea of the flow of what we're doing here. And sometimes you have to put a little extra time into it to get some of the little fussy areas out. A lot of times lately I've been sort of using my marker to outline things a little bit more. And the best way to describe it would be like a coloring book, you know, where it's all the mark lines and all you do is color in the areas, the shape. But I like to get back into more of the style that I like, that I'm used to doing. And I can't say that I like to do things too realistic in a way. I like everything to be kind of broken down in a simpler form, so that you can leave a little bit to the imagination to the viewer. Let them kind of figure out what you're trying to do, I guess. Whatever you're trying to do, sometimes the artist probably wonders what he's doing, or she's doing too, you know. It's interesting. Sometimes you could start off with different media too. There was an artist that started off with using oil paints, some sort of an oil, whatever it was. I don't know if it was alcohol or something, but they did the painting, let it dry, and then they did use pastel chalk on top of that, and that's become common. And a lot of colored ink paintings lately. Excuse me. A lot of colored ink type of things. Okay, now I'm heading into the home stretch here, and what I'm going to just do is just add a little bit of texture underneath some of these areas that are supposed to be little clusters of flowers. So let's put some green, put a little bit of green around the base of some of that. I want to take time to take the tape off here and show you what it might look like. Now, when I do that, I have to make sure I've got my corners and everything covered right to the edge of the tape. Okay, there we go. What's that? Make sure it has a little bit more contrast. Now you can get kind of as fussy as you want with this, or leave it alone. Sometimes I'll get to a point where I should stop and just leave it, you know, let it set overnight and let the colors dry out pretty good, settle in, and get a better idea what I need to do to finish it, maybe, or just not finish it. Just say, okay, looks okay. Don't try to do too much more. Okay, there you go. But like I've taken something, a photograph, and because it's a little bit fuzzy to begin with, out of focus, you can do more with it and make it into more of an abstract type of painting. I still have to come back in. Wait a minute. I guess I got enough white. You know, I guess but I may still want to come in and show push some water back into this. I don't know if I can get it to work. It's acrylic paint, it dries out fast too. Let's see if I can get some little texture, water texture back into this. Whoa, they get some more paint on the brush here. You get the idea of how that has to look. Okay. All right, now. It still needs some touch-up, okay? It still needs a little bit of contrast through here of the edge. And I just make the water itself a little darker. You know, just on the edge, and then a little darker down through here, a little darker through here maybe, and that's it. You might look at it tomorrow differently. One thing you don't want to do is keep painting wet in the wet in the wet in the wet, because after a while it just gets very dull. It loses its warmth or coolness. Okay, let's take the tape off here, see what we have. I try to put the tape on in a way that it's easier to remove. Sometimes. I don't know. Just have to be careful. Make sure your hands are clean. Dry. Whatever. Okay. Here we go. Now, the photograph itself, to me, is almost sort of semi-abstract to begin with. So, my painting may be more so. The word abstract, you know, means that you've taken away from it, taken away some of the, whoops, don't want to go that route. There we are. Okay. So, it still has to be developed a little bit more. I got to show more emphasis on maybe the contour of the waterfall. But you can see within the waterfall, or within the whole photograph, that's sort of been, it's sort of filtered to a point where it's almost blended out quite of the much of the sharp edges and detail. So it becomes more of a abstract type of painting. Okay? We're not quite clear what's happening in here too much. So I have to go around it and try to define the waterfall. And all I have to do is just make this more convincing you'll see some of the white of the aeration of the water in there, and that will say waterfall. The rest will be filling in with your own imagination, pretty much. So that's about it for this day, and thanks for being with us, and brushes up.